Book 7, the Book of Yoga, Canto 5, the Finding of the Soul. Onward she passed, seeking the soul's mystic cave. So after Savitri meets the three Madonnas, the triple soul forces in the universe, and of course their warped echoes on the human plane, she then proceeds further. Onward she passed, seeking the soul's mystic cave. At first, she stepped into a night of God. So, there is this night that everybody has to go into before one goes further, but it is a night of God. Because even in ignorance and darkness, it is the shadow of light, so the divine is present. And especially Savitri, who is seeking her soul, is going into it consciously. At first, she stepped into a night of God. The light was quenched that helps the laboring world, the power that struggles and stumbles in our life. This inefficient mind gave up its thoughts. So obviously the mind fell quiet and silent. This inefficient mind gave up its thoughts, the striving heart, its unavailing hopes. All knowledge failed, and the ideas forms, and wisdom screened in awe her lowly head, feeling a truth too great for thought or speech, formless, ineffable, forever the same. An innocent and holy ignorance, adored like one who worships formless God, the unseen light she could not claim nor own. In a simple purity of emptiness, her mind knelt down before the unknowable. All was abolished, save her naked self and the prostrate yearning of her surrendered heart. There was no strength in her, no pride of force. The lofty burning of desire had sunk. Ashamed, a vanity of separate self, the hope of spiritual greatness fled. Salvation she asked not, nor a heavenly crown. Humility seemed now too proud a state. So Savitri knelt down, her mind knelt down before the unknowable, her surrendered heart, yearning, prostrated, did a full pranam, and the desire, the lofty burning of desire, ashamed that one could even have desires that were separate, they also sunk and left. And even the hope of spiritual greatness fled. Even the ego of the spiritual ego, or even the hope and aspiration for spiritual greatness fled. Everything had to first leave, all from every part of her being. All pride of force, all desire, all hope of spiritual greatness, even the hope of salvation and mukti, everything left her. And even humility was now too humble, too proud a state. That means humility also requires a sense of separateness, to be humble. But even that was too proud. It was complete surrender, complete emptiness, complete silence, complete self-giving that Savitri experienced, and she gave herself completely to, in front of what? the unknowable. Formless, ineffable, forever the same, her mind knelt down before the unknowable, that which cannot be known. Salvation she asked not, nor a heavenly crown. Humility seemed now too proud a state. Herself was nothing, God alone was all. Yet God she knew not, but only knew He was. A sacred darkness brooded now within. The world was a deep darkness, great and nude. This void held more than all the teeming worlds. This blank felt more than all that time has borne. This dark knew dumbly, immensely the unknown. But all was formless, voiceless, infinite. As might a shadow walk in a shadowy scene, a small note passing through a mightier note, a night of person in a bare outline, crossing a fathomless, impersonal night, silent she moved, empty and absolute. A small note passing through a mightier note means note is nothingness, not zero. Passing through a bigger note. A might of person in a bare outline. Silent she moved, empty and absolute. In endless time, her soul reached a wide end. The spaceless vast became her spirit's place. At last a change approached. The emptiness broke. A wave rippled within. The world had stirred. Once more, her inner self became her space. There was felt a blissful nearness to the goal. Heaven leaned low to kiss the sacred hill. The air trembled with passion and delight. A rose of splendor on a tree of dreams, the face of dawn out of mooned twilight grew. Day came, priest of a sacrifice of joy, into the worshipping silence of her world. He carried immortal luster as his robe trailed heaven like a purple scarf, and wore as his vermilion caste mark a red sun. As if an old remembered dream come true, she recognized in her prophetic mind the imperishable luster of that sky, the tremulous sweetness of that happy air, and covered from mind's view and life's approach the mystic cavern in the sacred hill, and knew the dwelling of her secret soul. So he uses the allegory, the imagery of the twilight, the darkness, like every day. First there is darkness, then there's twilight, then there is the dawn, and then there is the sun that comes up. So in the same way, Savitri's own journey, she goes into the night of God. There she becomes totally still, totally surrendered, gives up everything, in fact does not almost exist as a separate being. And then from that night of God she goes into the twilight, and something begins to awaken. And then she feels as though heaven is touching the sacred hill. As she awakens and sees this light of dawn, It is the light of her soul that she glimpses. So through this allegory of the twilight, the dawn, and the rising of the sun, and then the red vermilion sun that she sees, it is showing through that, Sri Aurobindo is showing how Savitri comes to find her inner soul. So it's beautiful poetry, but also very mystic and has a double meaning to it. As if an old remembered dream come true, she recognized in her prophetic mind the imperishable luster of that sky, the tremulous sweetness of that happy air, and covered from mind's view and life's approach the mystic cavern in the sacred hill, and knew the dwelling of her secret soul. As if in some Elysian occult depth, truth's last retreat from thought's profaning touch, as if in a rock temple's solitude hid, God's refuge from an ignorant, worshipping world, it lay withdrawn, even from life's inner sense. So what lay withdrawn? The secret soul. It lay withdrawn as if in a rock temple solitude, hid from the ignorant worshipping world. It lay withdrawn even from life's inner sense, receding from the entangled heart's desire. A marvelous brooding twilight met the eyes, and a holy stillness held that voiceless space. A marvelous brooding twilight met the eyes, and a holy stillness held that voiceless space. An awful dimness wrapped the great rock doors, carved in the massive stone of matter's trance. Two golden serpents round the lintel curled, enveloping it with their pure and dreadful strength. So the serpents were gold, and they were round the lintel curve. They were at the doorway that opened into the secret cavern of her soul. So these serpents are actually symbolisms of the divine energy. That's why golden serpent, not because in different ways you can use the colors. These ones had coiled within them. They actually were guarding the inner soul, the secret soul. So two golden serpents round the lintel curved. The lintel is the door's lintel on top. Enveloping it with their pure and dreadful strength, looked out with wisdom's deep and luminous eyes. An eagle covered it with wide conquering wings. So first there were the two golden serpents that on the doorway, the lintel of this carved cave, they were sitting there, guarding it with this deep wisdom, deep and luminous eyes, pure and dreadful strength. Then over in front of that was an eagle that covered the whole thing with a wide conquering wings. You can imagine this eagle sitting there. Flames of self-lost, immobile reverie, doves crowded the grey musing cornices. So not only was there a big eagle guarding the door, secret cave, but there were little doves that were crowding the grey musing cornices, the little spaces in the stone. And there was this eagle that was self-lost, immobile in reverie. You can just see this whole image. Doves crowded the grey musing cornices like sculptured postures of white bosomed peace. Across the threshold's sleep she entered in, and found herself amid great figures of gods, conscious in stone and living without breath. So Savitri enters through this doorway where this huge eagle, two golden serpents, and the doves are sitting. And as she enters, she sees around her great figures of gods sitting in conscious stone, like means that are so still, like statues. They were living without breathing, like sculptured postures of white bosom peace. Across the threshold sleep, she entered in and found herself amid great figures of gods, conscious in stone and living without breath, watching with fixed regard the soul of man. Executive figures of the cosmic self, world symbols of immutable potency. On the walls, covered with significant shapes. So this is all in this massive cavern that she's entering. First she enters into this, sees all of this, and then on the walls, here are these conscious figures of God sitting there. And then she looks at the wall of the cave, and what does she see? On the walls covered with significant shapes, looked at her, the life scene of man and beast, and the high meaning of the life of gods, the power and necessity of these numberless worlds, and faces of beings and stretches of world space, spoke the succinct and exhaustible, hieratic message of the climbing plains. So in this cave, she saw everything. It was like a moving film of the whole life of man and beast, world symbols, the power and necessity of all these numberless worlds she could see, the faces of beings that spoke the inexhaustible hieratic messages, occult hieratic, it's almost mystical, magic message of the climbing planes. So in fact this cave was showing her the whole world, the different planes of the worlds, the different beings of the worlds, the reason why the gods exist, the different languages, the messages, the occult wisdom. So she sees all that and hears this. In their immensitude, signing infinity, they were the extension of the self of God, and housed, impassively receiving all, His figures and His small and mighty acts, and His passion, and His birth, and life, and death, and His return to immortality. So these figures that she saw, actually the extension of the self of God, and were recording there His passion, His birth and life and death, and His return to immortality. Who? The self of God's. To the abiding and eternal is their climb. To the pure existence, everywhere the same. To the sheer consciousness and the absolute force and the unimaginable and formless bliss, to the mirth in time and the timeless mystery of the triune being who is all and one, and yet is no one but Himself apart. There was no step of breathing men, no sound, only the living nearness of the soul. Yet all the worlds and God Himself were there, for every symbol was a reality and brought the presence which had given it life. So even though there was no step of breathing men, no sound, except the living nearness of the soul, yet through these symbols they were actually Each symbol was a reality and brought the presence which had given it life. Yet all the worlds and God Himself were there, for every symbol was a reality and brought the presence which had given it life. All this she saw and inly felt, and knew not by some thought of mind, but by the self, a light not born of sun or moon or fire, a light that dwelt within and saw within, shedding an intimate visibility, made secrecy more revealing than the word. Our sight and sense are a fallible gaze and touch. Our sight and sense are a fallible gaze and touch, and only the Spirit's vision is wholly true. As thus she passed in that mysterious place, through room and room, through door and rock-hewn door, she felt herself made one with all she saw. So this, as Savitri is going towards the discovering and coming to and realizing her secret soul, she goes from room to room, from cave to cave. So it's not just one cave. The first cave enters into the second cave, and she keeps going deeper and deeper. If you remember this meditation that the mother has written about, which we often practice, when we try and go down into, concentrate in the heart and find our psychic being, what is the method we use? That we stand in front of the door and push with our will and let that door open. And then we go deep down into a tunnel and then another door. Then we again open that door. And we keep traveling to that light, to the mother. So same way, this is an inner travel that Savitri is taking. She's going from cave to cave. But in her sense, every cave is opening its secret to her. She is becoming one with all that she sees and experiences. And she, in a sense, Ashwapati gains this kind of cosmic consciousness through the traveler of the worlds. She is gaining that cosmic oneness and universality through the inner journey. So she is, these are very mystical, occult experiences which the mind cannot understand. You can only sense it. Like he says, our sight and sense are a fallible gaze and touch, and only the Spirit's vision is wholly true. And thus she passed in that mysterious place, through room and room, through door and rock-hewn door. The best is to visualize it, see it in your mind's eye. She felt herself made one with all she saw, a sealed identity within her woke, something that was sealed and closed within her broke and woke up. So a sealed identity within her woke. She knew herself the beloved of the Supreme. These gods and goddesses were he and she. The mother was she of beauty and delight, the word in Brahma's vast creating clasp, the world puissance on Almighty Shiva's lap, the master and the mother of all lives, watching the worlds their twin regard had made, and Krishna and Radha forever entwined in bliss. The adorer and adored, self lost and one. So when she knew herself as the beloved of the Supreme, then she realized that these gods and goddesses were he and she. The mother was she of beauty and delight, the word in Brahma's vast creating clasp, the world puissance on Almighty Shiva's lap, the master and the mother of all lives, watching the worlds their twin regard had made, and Krishna and Radha forever entwined in bliss. Purusha and Prakriti, the soul, psychic being, and the Jivatma, whatever you want to say, and Krishna and Radha, forever entwined in bliss, the adorer and adored, self-lost in one. In the last chamber, Now she enters into the last chamber. She's gone through several chambers. In the last chamber, on a golden seat, one sat, whose shape no vision could define. Only one felt the world's unattainable fount, a power of which she was a straying force. In the last chamber, on a golden seat, one sat whose shape no vision could define. Only one felt the world's unattainable fount, a power of which she was a straying force. An invisible beauty, goal of the world's desire, a sun of which all knowledge is a beam, a greatness without whom no life could be. Thence all departed into silent self, and all became formless and pure and bare. Then, through a tunnel dug in the last rock, she came out where there shone a deathless sun. A house was there, all made of flame and light, and crossing a wall of doorless living fire. So here there's no door. And crossing a wall of doorless living fire, there suddenly she met her secret soul. So Savitri has gone from the last rock where there is nothing. She has to dig a tunnel through that last rock and cavern, the cave. And when she digs that tunnel, through sheer force of aspiration, intense desire, intense aspiration to find that living soul, total surrender, then through a tunnel dug in the last rock, she came out where there shone a deathless sun, a sun that doesn't ever die, continuous. A house was there, all made of flame and light, and crossing a wall of doorless living fire, there suddenly she met her secret soul. A being stood, immortal, intransient. And then this description of what is the secret soul. Who is the secret soul that Savitri meets there? That description is given. A being stood, immortal in transience. Savitri, as we said, when she goes through door and door, to tunnel and tunnel, from one cave to the other of her inner being, and she goes towards the psychic. She goes to find her secret soul. And then she comes into this wall of doorless living fire. And there she sees a being who stood immortal in transience, deathless, dallying with momentary things, in whose wide eyes of tranquil happiness, which pity and sorrow could not abrogate, infinity turned its gaze on finite shapes. Observer of the silent steps of the hours, eternity upheld the minute's acts and the passing scenes of the everlasting's play. In the mystery of its selecting will, in the divine comedy, a participant, the Spirit's conscious representative, God's delegate in our humanity, comrade of the universe, the transcendence ray, she had come into the mortal body's room to play at ball with time and circumstance. So Savitri meets her secret soul, and then this is a description of that being that stood. And Sri Aurobindo here refers to this soul as the Spirit's conscious participant, God's delegate in our humanity, comrade of the universe, the transcendent ray. She had come into the mortal body's room to play at ball with time and circumstance. a joy in the world, her master movement here. The passion of the game lighted her eyes. A smile on her lips welcomed earth's bliss and grief. A laugh was her return to pleasure and pain. All things she saw as a masquerade of truth, disguised in the costumes of ignorance, crossing the years to immortality. All she could front with the strong spirit's peace, but since she knows the toil of mind and life, as a mother feels and shares her children's lives, she puts forth a small portion of herself, a being no bigger than the thumb of man, into a hidden region of the heart, to face the pang and to forget the bliss, to share the suffering and endure earth's wounds, and labor mid the labor of the stars. So you understand here what's happening. This secret soul that Savitri meets is the mother, the Supreme Mother, Divine Mother. And it is the delegate of that immortal being in her, that what you could call as the Jivatman in Sanskrit. That is the soul, not the psychic. And this Jivatman, or this divine conscious being, puts forward into evolution, or into the being, each being, the psychic being which is no bigger than the thumb of man. So, and crossing a wall of doorless living fire, there suddenly she met her secret soul. And then this secret soul is described and says, all she could front with the strong spirit's peace, but since she knows the toil of mind and life, as a mother feels and shares her children's lives, she puts forth a small portion of herself, a being no bigger than the thumb of man, into a hidden region of the heart, to face the pang and to forget the bliss, to share the suffering and endure earth's wounds, and labor mid the labor of the stars. This in us laughs and weeps, suffers the stroke, exults in victory, struggles for the crown. Identified with the mind and body and life, it takes on itself their anguish and defeat, bleeds with fate's whips, and hangs upon the cross, yet is the unwounded and immortal self, supporting the actor in the human scene. Through this she sends us her glory and her powers, pushes to wisdom's heights through misery's gulfs. She gives us strength to do our daily task, and sympathy that partakes of others' grief, and the little strength we have to help our race. We who must fill the role of the universe, acting itself out in a slight human shape, and on our shoulders carry the struggling world. This is in us the Godhead, small and marred. In this human portion of divinity, she seats the greatness of the soul in time. So Savitri, when she meets her secret soul, there are two parts to it. She meets her secret soul outside of time, the higher super soul you could call, or the Jivatman. And then she meets the same soul, which she recognizes that is what sends the psychic being, the divinity in us, which is no bigger than the thumb of man. She meets the same soul within her, which is the psychic being. So this is the dual aspect of the soul that they are describing, that Savitri realized. That's why it's called the finding of the soul. So when she finds the soul, it is not just the finding of the psychic being, it is also the finding of the source of the psychic being. So she finds that, the representative being from whom the psychic emerges. And that psychic is in herself and in all beings. So Savitri, in a sense, is not just talking about herself when she meets the soul. She becomes one with the soul of all beings, one with the soul of the world. So there is a certain cosmic realization or consciousness, and also consciousness of when you meet your soul, then you become one. The ego separates, the soul unites. And then you understand the oneness. So that's why this whole thing, description of humanity, the description of the psychic being coming down in time and how it acts and so on. So this is an interesting way through poetry that Sri Aurobindo is explaining what he does in prose, in the synthesis of yoga, the life divine, and letters on yoga. So let's take that again. To share the suffering and endure earth's wounds and labor mid the labor of the stars. Obviously, she's not talking about that. There's something universal. The universal aspect is here being described. This in us laughs and weeps, suffers the stroke. This in us exults in victory, struggles for the crown. Identified with the mind and body and life. What is identified with the mind and body and life? The psychic. The psychic representative that comes down into the human consciousness, into the human body, identifies itself with the mind and body and life. It takes on itself their anguish and defeat, bleeds with fate's whips and hangs upon the cross. Yet is the unwounded and immortal self supporting the actor in the human scene. So psychic doesn't get wounded. It supports the actor in the human scene. Through this she sends us her glory and her past. Through what? Through the psychic representative in us. Through this she sends us her glory and her powers. Pushes to wisdom's heights through misery's gulfs. Please understand this. If you want to be wise, you have to suffer. Because it is only through misery and suffering that one grows in consciousness. One begins to understand, and the soul only grows and evolves when there is some fire, something that chisels it. So that's why he says these lines. Supporting the actor in the human scene. Through this she sends her glory and her powers, pushes to wisdom's heights, through misery's gulfs. She gives us strength to do our daily task, and sympathy that partakes of others' grief, and the little strength we have to help our race, we who must fill the role of the universe, acting itself out in a slight human shape, and on our shoulders carry the struggling world. This is in us the Godhead, small and marred, in this human portion of divinity, human portion, okay? So what is the human portion of divinity? The psychic. In this human portion of divinity, she, who's she? The mother of the universe, the supreme mother, the one, the oversoul, whatever word you want, super soul, whatever you want to call it. The delegate from where all of this comes, okay? She, not Savitri. Savitri is a representative of that, but this is not that. It is Savitri who is discovering this, okay? In this human portion of divinity, she seats the greatness of the soul in time. So in this human portion of divinity, she seats the greatness of the soul in time. The soul in time is the Chaitya Purush. The soul outside of time, above time, is what? Or the Jivatman and the Atman. Okay? This in Sanskrit is very precise and clear. English words will always confuse, unfortunately. I can keep using oversoul and supersoul, everybody will be confused. Okay. So she seats the greatness of the soul in time to uplift from light to light, from power to power, till on a heavenly peak it stands, a king, in body weak, in its heart an invincible might. It climbs stumbling. Who climbs stumbling? In body weak, in its heart an invincible might. It climbs stumbling, held up by an unseen hand, a toiling spirit in a mortal shape. Here in this chamber, which chamber? This is the last chamber talking about, the chamber Savitri is in. Here in this chamber of flame and light they met. Who met? Savitri and her secret soul. Here in this chamber of flame and light they met. They looked upon each other, knew themselves. The secret deity and its human part. The calm immortal and the struggling soul. Then, with a magic transformation speed, they rushed into each other and grew one. This is when the merging comes of Savitri with the secret soul, with that soul which you said. Where with the she first, then they rushed into each other and grew one.
What is the calm immortal?
The calm immortal is that being that is the super soul, yeah. And the struggling soul is the psychic Savitri. Yeah, they both come into one. Then with the magic transformation speed, they rushed into each other and grew one. So after this experience that Savitri has of realizing, this is a very, 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 very high experience, a spiritual experience that Sri Aurobindo is describing of Savitri meeting and becoming one with her secret soul, above and below, and within her psychic being, merging into the the Jivatman, the Atman and the Jivatman becoming one. After that, once more she was human upon earthly soil. And she comes back into her, down on the human, into her mortal consciousness. This is a inner experience she's had. So once more she was human upon earthly soil. In the murmuring night amid the rain-swept woods. So again, you have a beautiful description of where Savitri is at the moment. Once more she was human upon earthly soil. In the muttering night amid the rain-swept woods and the rude cottage where she sat in trance. That is it. So she was in trance. She had this experience. She comes back into her mortal consciousness. And the rude cottage where she sat in trance. Visualize it. See where she is. She's in the middle of this forest, in this very thatched, rude means more like Sri Aurobindo uses, rustic. Once more she was human upon earthly soil, in the muttering night amid the rain-swept woods, and the rude cottage where she sat in trance. That subtle world withdrew deeply within. So that subtle world that which we read, this experience and this whole travel, this realizing, that subtle world withdrew deeply within, behind the sun veil of the inner sight. So Savitri has met her soul, the Supreme Mother above, and then she comes down on earth, and there her centers, the chakras, all the chakras open up. Behind the sun veil of the inner sight, but now the half-opened lotus bud of her heart, that is the place for the psychic center, is behind the Anahat chakra, behind the heart, had bloomed and stood disclosed to the earthly ray. In an image shone, revealed her secret soul. There was no wall severing the soul and mind, no mystic fence guarding from the claims of life. In its deep lotus home, her being sat, as if on concentration's marble seat, calling the mighty mother of the worlds to make this earthly tenement her house. So she becomes totally one with the divinity within and sees it's almost like her being is so developed that it sits inside her heart on concentration's throne, calling the mighty mother of the worlds to make this earthly tenement her house. As in a flash from a supernal light, a living image of the original power, a face, a form came down into her heart and made of it its temple and pure abode. But when its feet had touched the quivering bloom, a mighty movement rocked the inner space, as if a world were shaken and found its soul. When this living image of the original power, the mighty mother, when its face, a form came down into her heart, there was a complete meeting of the Supreme Soul and her individual soul. A living image of the original power, a face, a form came down into her heart, and made of it its temple and pure abode. But when its feet had touched the quivering bloom, a mighty movement rocked the inner space, as if a world were shaken and found its soul. Out of the inconscious, soulless, mindless night, a flaming serpent rose, released from sleep. It rose, billowing its coils, and stood erect, and climbing mightily, stormily on its way. It touched her centers with its flaming mouth. So it's important to see that it is a descent from above that awakens the Shakti from within. This is the Kundalini that is being referred to here. The serpent, the flaming serpent rose released from sleep. But it is the descent from above that awakens, and then all the living centers are open to the divine. It rose, billowing its coils, and stood erect, and climbing mightily, stormily on its way. It touched her centers with its flaming mouth, as if a fiery kiss had broken their sleep. So these centers normally in us lie dormant, they lie asleep, they don't awaken, and they don't open to the divine. They are lotuses from the from underneath the feet to the knees to the Muladhara, then the Swadhisthana, and all the various chakras going right up above the head to the Sahasrara chakra. So all these chakras which we've read about and know about in yoga started opening up in Savitri. They bloomed and laughed, surcharged with light and bliss. So these centers and each of the lotus there bloomed and laughed, surcharged with light and bliss. Then at the crown it joined the eternal space. In the flower of the head, in the flower of matter's base, in each divine stronghold and nature not. Please notice the word. Flower of the head is the 1,000-petaled Sahasrara chakra. In the flower of matter's base is the chakra which is at the sole of the feet. So both of these chakras, in each divine stronghold and nature not. So they're both divine strongholds and nature not. It held together the mystic stream which joins the viewless summits with the unseen depths. The string of forts that make the frail defense, safeguarding us against the enormous world. Our lines of self-expression in its vast. So this string of forts are these, they make a frail defense. In the sense, these chakras also protect us from the outside invading world. Because if our soul is not in front, if we have not realized our inner being and the psychic being, if the chakras open prematurely, then we can also be open to all kinds of demoniac and asuric forces. So that is why, in a sense, there is a protection from nature. So that until you're ready, these chakras should not open. Some people get unbalanced and so on. So there is a whole process in evolutionary nature that protects us. So that is what he's referring to here. Then at the crown it joined the eternal space. In the flower of the head and the flower of matter's base. And that is why Sri Aurobindo and the Mother often have written to sadhaks and told them that do not try and open, do not try and get the Kundalini Shakti to open by itself. Do not force it, do not do it prematurely. Wait for the descent. Let it come from above downwards rather than from below upwards. Because a lot of people who have done yoga, who have had premature without purification of the outer nature, if the Kundalini Shakti opens and completely opens all the centers, you have also a huge sexual imbalance, various things happen. It's a very, very dark thing that could take place if you are not ready. So therefore, it's very important to note here the process with which it takes place. It's a descent from above that awakens and opens the ascent of the same spiritual force in the form of the flaming serpent from below. The string of forts that make the frail defense, safeguarding us against the enormous world, our lines of self-expression in its vast. An image sat of the original power, wearing the mighty mother's form and face. So there inside Savitri, an image sat of the original power, wearing the mighty mother's form and face, armed, bearer of the weapon and the sign, whose occult might no magic can imitate. Manifold yet one she sat, a guardian force, a savior gesture stretched her lifted arm, and symbol of some native cosmic strength, a sacred beast lay prone below her feet. So that original power of the Mother, the sacred beast, it almost gives this sense of Mother Durga, a silent flame-eyed mass of living force, all underwent a high celestial change. So when this Supreme Mother sits and comes and descends into Savitri, everything in Savitri undergoes a high celestial change. So please notice the beautiful imagery where an image sat of the original power, wearing the mighty Mother's form and face, armed, bearer of the weapon and the sign, whose occult might no magic can imitate. Manifold yet one she sat, a guardian force. A savior gesture stretched her lifted arm, and symbol of some native cosmic strength, a sacred beast lay prone below her feet, a silent flame-eyed mass of living force. All underwent a high celestial change, breaking the black inconscience, blind mute wall. So we read in Life Divine that this inconscience, how it is so tardy, how difficult it is to get rid of it. That is in the very nature and foundation of human nature. So here, when the mighty mother came down and descended and opened every center of Savitri, and her whole being became one with the Supreme, then, breaking the black inconscience blind mute wall, effacing the circles of the ignorance. Please refer back to our Life Divine lesson. What are these circles of ignorance? Now we understand. Breaking the black inconscience blind mute wall, effacing the circles of the ignorance. Powers and divinities burst flaming forth, each part of the being trembling with delight, lay overwhelmed with tides of happiness, and saw her hand in every circumstance, and felt her touch in every limb and cell. So this complete divinization of Savitri is taking place here. In the country of the lotus of the head, which thinking mind has made its busy space, in the castle of the lotus twixt the brows, whence it shoots the arrows of its sight and will, in the passage of the lotus of the throat, where speech must rise in expressing mind, and the heart's impulse run towards word and act, a glad uplift and a new working came. Now tell me which chakras these are. In the country of the lotus of the head, Sahasrala, which thinking mind has made its busy space, in the castle of the lotus twixt the brows, name of the chakra, Agni Chakra, in the castle of the lotus twixt the brows, whence it shoots the arrows of its sight and will, in the passage of the lotus of the throat, what is the chakra? Visuddhi, yes. In the passage of the lotus of the throat, where speech must rise in expressing mind, and the heart's impulse run towards word and act, a glad uplift and a new working came. So completely a new working came, completely transformed. All these chakras are opened up and their true force and their true nature started expressing itself. So this is beautiful poetry, but it is really the yoga. It is the absolute description of the transformation and the most beautiful language you can imagine. But each of these are psychological stages in transformation. And the heart's impulse run towards word and act, a glad uplift and a new working came. The immortal's thoughts displaced our bounded view. Please notice, suddenly the narrator is changing from her to our. Now he is making a commentary on the whole of the yoga of human, how the yoga and the force in the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo, when the descent takes place, how it changes. This is, you have to note these subtle changes in the text. So, a glad uplift and a new working came. This is the end of the description of Savitri. Now he is turning and saying something else. What is he saying? The immortal's thoughts displaced our bounded view. The immortal's thoughts, earth's drab idea and sense, all things now bore a deeper, heavenlier sense. A glad, clear harmony marked their truth's outline, reset the balance and measures of the world. Each shape showed its occult design, unveiled God's meaning in it, for which it was made, and the vivid splendor of his artist's thought. So each thing began to show its truth, its deeper raison d'etre, and the whole way that one looked at the world, our whole view of the world changed when this happened. So this is in a way he's saying that when this takes place in the human being, in the human soul on earth, there's a change of consciousness. And this change of consciousness is what he's describing here. The immortal's thoughts displaced our bounded egoistic view. The immortal's thoughts displaced earth's drab idea and sense. All things now bore a deeper, heavenlier sense. Glad, clear harmony marked their truth's outline. Please notice the word glad, clear harmony. Harmony is not being put there just for sense of poetry. There is a deeper meaning and we know what it is now. when we are reading about the supramental Gnostic consciousness in Life Divine. A glad, clear harmony marked their truth's outline, reset the balance and measures of the world. Each shape showed its occult design, unveiled God's meaning in it for which it was made, and the vivid splendor of his artist's thought. A channel of the mighty mother's choice. Who was a channel of the mighty mother's choice here? Savitri. Now back to Savitri. A channel of the mighty mother's choice, the immortal's will took into its calm control our blind or erring government of life, a loose republic once of wants and needs, then bowed to the uncertain sovereign mind, life now obeyed to a diviner rule, and every act became an act of God in the kingdom of the lotus of the heart. Now, we had finished till the Visuddha Chakra. Now, this force continues in the kingdom of the lotus of the heart. The name of the chakra there, Anahat. In the kingdom of the lotus of the heart, love chanting its pure hymeneal hymn made life and body mirrors of sacred joy, and all the emotions gave themselves to God. You must have heard this very beautiful poem 1,000 times. Thy golden light came down into my mind. So this is it. That poem is actually a description of the descent of the new consciousness and the supramental light. Okay, so in the navel lotus's broad imperial range, name of the chakra, Manipur chakra. In the navel lotus's broad imperial range, its proud ambitions and its master lusts. So each of these, see, the next line always describes what is the center of that particular lotus, particular center. So in the Manipur chakra, for example, in the navel lotus, broad imperial range, what is the main knot there? The proud ambitions, master lusts. So it is the center of the vital being, the lower vital and the higher vital. Okay? So were tamed into instruments of a great calm sway. So all these vital emotions and desires and lusts and all of this was tamed. As soon as that center opens in us, which it did in Savitri, that center gets transformed into its higher divine counterpart. So what happens then? In the navel lotus's broad imperial range, its proud ambitions and its master lusts were tamed into instruments of a great calm sway to do a work of God on earthly soil. In the narrow nether centers, petty parts, its childish game of daily dwarf desires, this is the lower vital, was changed into a sweet and boisterous play, a romp of little gods with life and time. In the deep place where once the serpent slept, so after the Manipur chakra is the which? So Swadhisthana is the lower vital. Okay, in the narrow nether centers, petty parts, that's the Swadhisthana. Its childish game of daily dwarf desires was changed into a sweet and boisterous play, a romp of little gods with life and time. Then we come to the next chakra. In the deep place where once the serpent slept, there came a grip on matter's giant powers. For large utilities and life's little pace, a firm ground was made for heaven's descending might. What is the name of the chakra? Muladhara. Behind all reigned her sovereign deathless soul. So the firm ground was made in the Muladhara, where the serpent slept. There came a grip on matter's giant power. So this was a place which, if one had mastery over the Muladhara, then one had mastery over matter, the material world, the body, so on. There came a grip on matter's giant powers for large utilities in life's little space. A firm ground was made for heaven's descending might. Behind all reigned her sovereign, deathless soul. So behind all these centers, behind all these chakras, reigned her sovereign, deathless soul. Casting aside its veil of ignorance. Who is casting aside its veil of ignorance? The psychic being, the psychic soul. Casting aside its veil of ignorance, allied to gods and cosmic beings and powers, it built the harmony of its human state. So behind all the things, all the chakras, in the deep center of behind the chest reigned her deathless soul, which casting aside its veil of ignorance, allied itself to gods and cosmic beings and powers, and built the harmony of its human state. Surrendered into the great world mother's hands, only she obeyed her sole supreme behest. So she was totally surrendered into the great world mother's hands, and only she obeyed her sole supreme behest in the enigma of the inconscious world. A secret soul behind, supporting all, is master and witness of our ignorant life. Admits the person's look and nature's role. So both person is a capital P and nature is a capital N. But once the hidden doors are flung apart, then the veiled king steps out in nature's front. So once the hidden doors are flung apart due to the descent of the consciousness and the ascent of the hidden deep spiritual powers in the inconscient, both meeting, once the hidden doors are flung apart, then what happens? Then the veiled king, the psychic being, the soul, steps out in nature's front. A light comes down into the ignorance. So its heavy, painful knot loosens its grasp. The mind becomes a mastered instrument, and life a hue and figure of the soul. So this is what happens when the psychic being comes forward. The mind then becomes a mastered instrument, and life a hue and figure of the soul, and then the light that comes down into the ignorance, and the veiled king steps out in nature's front. So this is now a description of when the psychic being comes forward to take up the evolution and to take up the nature and becomes master of one's human nature. And this is then the description of that, what happens to oneself. So this is what happens to Savitri. The mind becomes a mastered instrument. Whole of life becomes just not only oneself, one's mind, but even one's whole life. A hue and figure of the soul. Do you understand what that means? A hue means like a particular glow. Yeah. A hue and figure means takes on the figure of the soul. Life becomes. It's very important to note. And life becomes a hue and figure of the soul. So unlike the other yogas where you have to leave life, here your entire life becomes a hue and figure of the soul. All happily grows towards knowledge and towards bliss. And then everything, life, mind, body, everything grows. Whole of life grows. A divine puissance then takes nature's place. So instead of Prakriti, human nature, our ordinary nature, a divine puissance. What does puissance mean?
Strength, force.
A divine puissance then takes nature's place and pushes the movements of our body and mind. Possessor of our passionate hopes and dreams, the beloved despot of our thoughts and acts, she streams into us with her unbound force. So what happens then? A divine puissance takes over nature, then takes nature's place, pushes the movements of our body and mind, possessor of our passionate hopes and dreams, the beloved despot of our thoughts and acts, she streams into us with her unbound force. So note the difference here. He says the hidden king. Do you understand? Here she streams into us with her unbound force. Into mortal limbs, the immortal's rapture and power. So she is the world mother, the divine supreme soul, our oversoul or the supernature. That is above. So that streams into the whole body, whole mind, and completely takes over one nature through the psychic being. You understand? The entry is through the psychic soul that has come forward when those doors open. It cannot come down without the psychic being first being realized and coming forward. So then it comes through the psychic into the mind, into the body, into the whole life, and changes everything. So note the way the description is going. Then the veiled king steps out in nature's front. A light comes down into the ignorance. Its heavy, painful knot loosens its grasp. The mind becomes a mastered instrument, and life a hue and figure of the soul. All happily grows towards knowledge and towards bliss. Divine puissance then takes nature's place and pushes the movements of our body and mind. Possessor of our passionate hopes and dreams, the beloved despot of our thoughts and acts, she streams into us with her unbound force, into mortal limbs, the immortal's rapture and power. An inner law of beauty shapes our lives. So, what begins to shape our life? An inner law of beauty shapes our lives. Our words become the natural speech of truth. So, even our words, we cannot even utter untruth. And we cannot utter falsehood. Our entire life, our words even become a natural speech of truth. It happens naturally. Each thought is a ripple on a sea of light. That is why the mother was very, very particular about this. She said, don't even tell a white lie. Don't lie. If you lie, even unconsciously to save yourself, you are going one step towards ignorance and darkness and closing the psychic being. Every lie is a step towards the shutting off of the psychic being. So she says, whatever happens, the greatest courage, there's a quotation I read yesterday, the greatest courage is in being truthful. So even if you think that this is just I'm not really lying, I'm not telling the truth. If you have to say something, tell the truth. Be courageous and tell the truth. Otherwise, keep quiet. But do not lie. At every moment, we are sometimes tempted to lie. I'll just say I'm out of town. Somebody is harassing me. मैं तो यहाँ नहीं हूँ. I am something. Small lies. Once you become conscious, you will begin to recognize these little lies we tell. And lies, every lie takes you towards bad health. You know, there's this research done by Harvard University, which Professor Manoj Das had given a talk on. And I was very taken aback by it. In this research, Manoj Das quotes that the chief cause of bad health is lying. But not the lies that are big lies. It's the small lies. The lies we tell without thinking. The lies we tell because we want to get out of a difficult situation. Or we want to somehow, we don't know what to do. So those little lies, small lies, those are the lies you have to stop telling. If you stop doing that, you make a conscious effort. I will not lie. Even if it's the most difficult thing to do, I will not lie. You make that sankalp in yourself. You see how you grow in your consciousness. Your psychic being will come forward. So people ask, how do you bring the psychic forward? Don't lie. That those little falsehoods that you tell yourself, those are also lies. Those little falsehoods that you tell others, those are also lies. Now this is very important, something that people don't talk about much. As you grow in yoga, you will notice Mother has said hundreds and hundreds of times. When you go up the steps to Sri Aurobindo's room, there's only one message as you climb the steps. What is it? Cling to truth. Why is it of all things she's put it there? Could have said anything else. Cling to truth. So there is something very deep in that. Now here again you see, an inner law of beauty shapes our lives. So if you want this inner law of beauty to shape your life, what is the first thing you have to stop doing? Not to lie. And not the big lies, small lies. And you will never have ill health. You will have no blood pressure, no diabetes, no nothing. Nothing will happen to you. Perfect health. Okay? Then sin and virtue leave the cosmic lists. They struggle no more in our delivered hearts. Our acts, and then what happens to our actions? Our acts chime with God's simple, natural good. Even our actions, they begin to chime. Our acts chime with God's simple, natural good or serve the rule of a supernal right. So all moods unlovely, evil and untrue forsake their stations in fierce disarray and hide their shame in the subconscious dusk. Okay? Then lifts the mind a cry of victory. Beautiful lines. What does this mean? Even all moods unlovely, all bad thoughts, all depression, all revolt, all unsavory moods, they all disappear, they run away because of this light of truth that shines on them. Forsake their stations in fierce disarray. They run away from their station. Otherwise, they're sitting in their different stations. They run away from there. Then, and hide their shame in the subconscious dusk. Then lifts the mind a cry of victory. And now, listen to this. This is in quotation marks. O soul, my soul, we have created heaven. Within we have found the kingdom here of God. So, Savitri, divine soul, the psychic soul, is speaking to Savitri now. O soul, my soul, we have created heaven. Within we have found the kingdom here of God, His fortress built in a loud, ignorant world. Our life is entrenched between two rivers of light. We have turned space into a gulf of peace and made the body a capital of bliss. What more, if more must still be done? And end of quotation mark. So this soul asks, what more, if more must still be done? In the slow process, then the narrator says, in the slow process of the evolving spirit, in the brief state between a death and birth, a first perfection stage is reached at last. So this is the first perfection stage. Out of the wood and stone of our nature stuff, a temple is shaped where the high gods could live. Now has it grown a temple where thou art, and all its emotions point towards only thee. So this temple is shaped where the high gods could live. Where is this temple? In the hidden heart, the psychic temple. A temple is shaped where the high gods could live. Even if the struggling world is left outside, one man's perfection still can save the world. Now you understand this quotation we put there. One man's perfection still can save the world. There is a new proximity to the skies, a first betrothal of the earth to heaven. First betrothal means first engagement between the earth and heaven is made when the psychic being and the temple. There is a new proximity to the skies, a first betrothal of the earth to heaven, a deep concordat between truth and life. Now please note the word truth and life. A deep concordat between truth and life. A camp of God is pitched in human time. Camp of God is pitched. So camp of God is pitched in human time. When the psychic come forward, that is the camp of God that is within you. That is pitched in human time, and it completely transforms your life. It's the first perfection. It's the first transformation. Do you remember now the triple transformation that in Letters of Yoga and Life Divine? So this is what's happened to Savitri here. So his fortress built in a loud, ignorant world, our life is entrenched between two rivers of light. So what are the two rivers of light, you think, that he's referring to here? Earth and heaven, you think? Sorry? Our life is entrenched between two rivers of light. So one is the river of light that is in the heart, the psychic being, the soul within, and the other is the river of light that is above, which is the super soul, the world mother, the mother. So the supreme mother and the psychic being. These are the two rivers of light. Okay? And end of Canto 5.